Yes, we were just commenting that Paul Engels let us know he wouldn't be here tonight, and we can get started. So Paul Engels is away.
You're Paul-less today.
Paul-less, okay.
Paul.
And I use their last names because there's two of them, not to disrespect anyone else. So if you want me to use your last name, I can do it also. Well, welcome. So for those of you here in person, in the event of an emergency, we can go out the back of the room, either door, and either way down the hallway to exit the building. For any changes to the agenda?
Yes. Delete the review of the minutes.
Delete the review of the minutes.
The minutes.
Okay, yes.
Were unintentionally omitted from the packet.
Thank you, Michael. Do we need to vote on that? We can.
That's okay. You
Okay,
can't
we'll
vote on
just
anything you
remove
don't
that.
have.
Okay. Open to the public for items not related to the agenda. So if you're not here for the city plan, you could.
Somebody wants to get in, I see.
Yeah,
Huh. Oh, you got them.
Okay, anything not related to the agenda? It looks like somebody's video is popped up. If it's related to, not related to the agenda, you can speak up. Okay, seems like none. So, any announcements? Okay, I guess the one announcement would be that we have multiple additional listening sessions coming up. Which Thursday of this week, the 27th at noon, Saturday, the 29th at 10 a.m., Tuesday, August 1 at noon. And I, for some reason, thought one was tomorrow, Wednesday, but that is not the case, in case someone else is also confused.
Library community.
They're all three in the community room in the library. So it's the second floor in the library, sort of the back corner. There is elevator access in the library to get to that room if anyone needs. So you go into the library and then they can direct you to the elevator that's contained within the library.
Great. Any other announcements?
I was going to skip Saturday, but I'm not going away, so I will go on Saturday as well.
Okay, that was my sort
Yeah.
of, my only thing was, I've actually only received 2 responses to the sign up. Did you send yours recently? Oh, I didn't see it when I looked today, but I'll double check.
I looked and it said that it was all taken care of, so I think it's there.
Okay,
I'll be at all 3.
okay, great.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
we just want to make sure that we have 2 commissioners at each. I know that Saturday can be tough for some people, and weekday, midday can also be tough for some people. So understandable if you can only make it to one or the other of those 2 options, but they're listening sessions for the commission, and so we would love for for commissioners to be able to report back to the full commission. Staff will be attending all sessions and will be taking notes on comments that are made, but it would be great if we had 2 commissioners or more at each of those 3 sessions.
Will we be able to record the meeting as well?
Yep, so it will be same setup with a Zoom available, and we'll be able to record the same way as we do these.
Commissioners attend on Zoom meeting, one of the meetings.
Yeah, if that's how we get more commissioners to attend, that would be fine with me. It would be preferable to have a little more presence in the room, but if that's how you make it to sort of the second one of the 2 that you can do. Okay.
Saturday.
Okay, yep. I just want to make sure that we've got some people at each, and it's not just staff.
Yeah, so I guess along those lines, so tonight I'm going to be giving an overview here, and I am not able to attend any of the other listening sessions. I thought the one was tomorrow, and my Thursday is booked up in Lamoille County doing flood visits. So I had thought I had arranged the week so I could do it, but my calendar.
You're doing good work.
So
Don't feel
I'm,
bad.
yeah, so I'm not able to, so I think it would be nice if others who are available could attend, could do the overview. So I don't know, Duncan, if you,
I think I could do Saturday.
okay, so
So
maybe,
I
Okay.
could do the overview then.
On
I
Saturday,
can do Thursday and I'm gone on the following.
the following week.
Okay.
Okay,
that would be really great. So it sounds like Duncan could maybe do Saturday.
We can
Do
use your PowerPoint.
Yep,
Yep,
yeah,
do the
so, and I
same
bring it up now because I think if somebody wants to do it, you might want to pay extra attention to the slides as a
Yeah.
prep, so. We don't need to decide now, but it sounds like, you know, Lori's at least going to all of them. Duncan can do Saturday, so. I guess the 2 noon ones. we'll have
yep,
to
we
figure out who
needed
will do the
someone to commit to
presentation,
do that on Thursday and on Tuesday, and that doesn't have to be the same person.
Yeah.
Both times.
So we can spread it out.
Mhm.
So can let us know. Okay, so with that, I think we can move on to our public listening session on the city plan. So there are some people joining us online and some in the room. Just as an overview of how we're going to do this, I have a short overview to kind of give some context as to what the city plan is and what we're talking about. Just as a kind of overview, and then after that, we can open up for public comment. And we can kind of give a little more context about that as we get to that point. So, Sarah?
I'm just having a little trouble hearing. Everyone can just make sure you're.
My
can make sure you're
speaker
speaking
is
close.
on. Yeah, well,
That's good.
Yeah,
it's
just make sure that you're
on.
speaking close enough to the microphone so
Do
that
you-
it's amplified.
I'm gonna try. Okay. So, oh, goodness.
Space bar that.
I'm gonna try to turn it up in the room a little bit. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Kelsey. So our city plan is what for many years we've called the comprehensive plan here in South Burlington. So the comprehensive plan and city plan are kind of interchangeable. We as a community are allowed to call our municipal plan anything that we want it to be called. It is called municipal plan in state statute. So we're considering changing it to city plan from comprehensive plan, maybe to be a little more clear. So the idea with the municipal plan is that it's an overarching plan. It lays out long-term vision and goals, along with actions that we can take to get it moving in that direction. We do readopt this every 8 years. So our last one was in 2016. But we're not only looking at that 8-year time frame. We're looking further into the future as well. So a lot of our work as the Planning Commission is on land use, but the city plan covers more than that. And in fact, there's a few things that are legislated that we are required to include. One of the newer items is having the plan also double as an energy plan as well for energy planning. And it's important that we actually have one of these in place because there's multiple either state grants or permit reviews that sometimes refer back to a city's comprehensive plan. So up on the screen, we have our foundational statement. So this is in the beginning of our plan. And kind of an overarching theme, just upfront saying that we are facing an existential threat to the warming planet and climate changes. So the idea that climate change is the most important goal in this plan and might apply across many different actions that we would take as a city over the next many years. We also have our guiding principles in our last plan. These were called the vision and goals. We still have 4, similar to how we had 4 we currently have 4 in our 2016 plan. But one of the differences we have here in our draft is that climate resilience would be kind of an overarching goal, an umbrella over all of the other goals as well. But with the statement that South Burlington also holds high the following guiding principles in every action we take as a community. So that our other goals are inclusive, fair, and just thoughtful and sustainable built environment, collaborative and engaged. And then under each of these guiding principles, there's many different issues that our community is facing or is expected to face over the many years ahead of us. So the plan has a process that we've been taking. We started back in the spring of 2022 with a review of the current plan that was in place, visioning about goals and values. And then there was an extensive process of listening sessions and topic-based discussions, work with committees, city staff and department heads. And we are right now in what we consider to be like kind of an informal draft stage, so that we're going to hear comment now and then make changes and then have an official draft that would go out for official public comment in an official public hearing setting. And then after we hear those comments, we would finalize and send to the city council. So the goal is that the city council would get the draft from us in September or October timeframe, so that then they can go on to their public hearings and adoption by February. So one of the things that's in the plan is planning for our future land use. We have a map shown on the screen. Each of these different colors represents a different type of land use that we will be planning for in the future. And they're color coded, with green being principally conservation and open space. This is one we've made some changes since our 2016 plan to include areas such as the habitat blocks and other areas that we've done some planning to keep open in the last many years, as well as some projections for where we want to keep open. So as you see in each of these, there's a little bit of overlap with small amounts of different land uses within them. So, principally conservation and open space may allow for some agricultural use or some very limited residential use where you might have one or two homes with a lot of open space. And then moving down through, we have well, that's not color coded well. I guess that's the yellow, maybe the yellow doesn't show up. So I said they were colored principally residential lower scale. So that's the pale yellow. And one of the things we wanted to make sure to point out in this comprehensive plan is that very low scale commercial could happen in these residential neighborhoods. An example being something like the small kind of community gardens and market in South Village. Then we have our principally residential higher scale. So these are medium scale neighborhoods, still primarily residential. And then the red being the balanced mixed residential and commercial high scale. So these would be areas like our city center, along a lot of our traveled corridors where you see both residential and commercial. We have a new category, the purple, are areas that we think could be have some residential included. They've been kind of in past plans just labeled as commercial industrial, but we're seeing that, with our housing crisis, these could be some areas where you actually have some residential included as well. And then our primarily commercial industrial areas as well. So the plan is organized with each section having an overview, goals and actions listed, and then a text discussion about the inventory analysis challenges, things that we want to work on, and resources. And then the different plan sections that we have are all listed there, starting with introduction, moving through different topic areas, and kind of ending with land use and appendices. One of those appendices is the enhanced energy plan that can help us with give very specific guidance on any public utility applications that might come through. So some of the big focuses of the plan are listed up here. Some of these really correspond to our guiding principles. We have our climate change mitigation and resilience, housing, creating city center, as well as businesses and local economic vibrancy in building community and environmental protection. So we are going to hear some feedback tonight, but this isn't the only chance. We have the other listening sessions coming up, and you can also submit comment by email as well. So I think what makes sense is Kelsey's going to take control back. And so our goal for tonight is to really hear from others, not from us up here. So we are up here to hear your comments, listen, take notes, and consider them at a future time. So what we aren't expecting for tonight is a lot of back and forth, a lot of question answering, but we definitely want feedback, and we'll be taking it all down. So, if we don't get into a big discussion back and forth, it's not because we don't like you or don't want to talk to you. It's really because we want to make sure we have time to hear from everyone. So
Couple of quick things. If you have any written feedback that you'd like to submit after this meeting, you came to listen tonight, but then you have some further thoughts. Those are due to that planning email, or bring it in person, or give us a call at the planning department by August 2nd. So I just wanted to point that out. And when you come up and you give your comment, it would be great if you would start with your first and last name. And that's all I had to say.
yeah, so does anyone in the room want to start? If you do, you can come up to the standing podium.
No,
this-
to the table
to
here with the two
sitting
microphones.
table with the microphones. Anyone in here? Okay. And we'll then open up for people online as well.
I'm Sarah Dobb. Two comments, I guess. Gotta push it. Yep, sorry. Yeah, it didn't sound quite right. Two comments. One, I'm really pleased to see how climate change has risen up within your process to be an overarching framework for this whole thing. That's really important. And we kind of saw that in action throughout the months that this has been under discussion, that, people kind of pushed that, and more so in the last month when we're seeing it up close and personal, the effects of climate change. So I just really applaud that. I like the general organization, and the focus is the guiding principles. I think that's good. They're all important things to be borne in mind, but over all of it is the specter of climate change. So that's really excellent. The other thing is I'm not just sure how to affect this, but just to give prominence to the potential for ag land. I mean, we have ag land that we recognize as such, but in the future, we're going to see a lot more pressures on some of that ag land, and it's not too far-fetched to think that we in South Burlington could be a primary exporter of food to some parts of the country, as we've been importers for so many years. And certainly we export some things now, but we might be in better shape than some parts of the country. Furthermore, we may be taking, as we all recognize, more climate refugees as time goes on. There's this perception that things are better in the Northeast, and that Vermont's this magic place, that it's, sort of out of the mainstream of these kinds of catastrophes. But that isn't really so. But it doesn't mean that people may not be flocking to our borders. And so we need to really give some careful thought to preserving our potential for usable ag land. And we've got a precedent for that already. We've got several people doing excellent work in that area. It's extremely successful. And we don't want it to be limited to those 2 or 3 producers in the future. So I guess, that's the gist of it. Protecting good farmland from being built over or eroded or otherwise compromised, I guess is my big overarching statement. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else? Anyone joining us online want to go? Oh, I don't see anyone jumping online if you wanted to come up.
I did have a couple of questions. Oh, I'm sorry. My first name is Nora. Last name is Senecal. I live Senecal, Senecal. I live over
Seneca.
in the Laurel Hill Orchards area. I did have a question. This is just like a factual question. This isn't a big detail question. Is how many working farms do we have in South Burlington?
It depends how you count them, but I would say 3 of commercial scale, 2 of which are sort of diversified and differing levels of focus on education, and 1 is a large dairy operation.
Okay. Where are they?
So the Belter Farm is the large dairy farm that's in the Winooski River floodplain,
Okay,
kind of
okay.
behind Country Club Estates area. The other, our Bread and Butter Farm is on Cheese Factory Road.
Yeah, I saw that was mentioned in the thing
Yeah.
but that has an address of Shelburne.
So its address is South Burlington. The property is split front and back into, it goes across the line into Shelburne, but they're also in the process of conserving land at the intersection of Heinsberg Road and Cheese Factory Road and expanding their agricultural operations onto the former Eau Claire Farm, which is fully within South Burlington.
Okay.
And then the third is Common Roots
Yeah,
at
yeah,
Sac
Common
Village.
Roots. Yeah, because driving around and then I looked up that
Oh, Sarah
farm.
has a,
Okay.
I was just going to say a 4th might be the horticultural farm of you.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
then
was thinking about it, but I wasn't sure what they were growing over there.
well, there's the UVM Hort Farm and
Yeah.
then some of UVM's cornfields and other fields
Yeah.
that support their dairy farm. And their dairy farm is actually in South Burlington as well, but we consider it more of an institutional farm instead of a commercial
Mhm.
farm, but those are the large ones.
Okay.
They're small sort of producers of various things kind of sprinkled throughout, but those are the big.
Those are the big ones. Okay. I guess a couple of my comments, as I was reading through the plan and within, and then looking at the proposed future land use and the current land use. I guess my comments are, 1 is, just noticing just a lot of the green in a certain section of the city, and that there's not, when we think about building up these areas, right? And so I'm gesturing around Williston Road and in this area around Shelburne Road, and then that area around City Center. We're putting a lot of people in some more congested areas. And then and I know there's parks, because I was just walking, yesterday and around where I live, but or a park and some land, but there's not going to be any open space or space really to put anything for the people who live in this area. And then they're going to comprise the majority of the people who live in South Burlington. So we've kind of locked up a lot of our open space in this one area, which is concerning because, from lots of levels, from an equity level, if we're trying to get people to use transportation, none of those areas, those larger areas around between Spear Street and Dorset Street, so like the Hubbard, the Wheeler, all those areas are not, they're not accessible if you, unless you have a car. And we're trying to get people to live in these other areas. They don't have access to the main recreational areas. And then I think what you're also going to possibly create are these heat zones. We just had a spate of really hot weather. So now we're going to concentrate a whole lot of concrete and buildings in these areas, which is going to create some pretty intense heat zones. I know I've said this in a meeting before, and I'm sorry for those of you who heard this, but I live not far from Shelburne Road, and I was happening to take my car in to get those tires changed, and it was hot on a Saturday morning walking. I mean, I was fine, but it's warm, and we don't have big trees. It's a big 4 lanes, and then everything's really close to those 4 lanes. It's hot. So we're creating these pretty incredible heat zones. And from an obvious equity issue, I think I don't see anything in the plan around prioritizing. I hear mentions of park. I see mentions of, I'm not saying it's not mentioned because there's mention of parklets and pocket parks, but that's a pretty big contrast to what is in the center of the Southeast quadrant. And so I'm just wondering if they're not wondering, I'm highly advocating for some thought around how are we as a city going to try and balance these things a little more, where 1/4 of the population lives, has all the access to the major recreational areas, and the rest of everybody doesn't. So that's kind of an obvious equity issue. And I'd also would like to just put a plug in to and this might be also a question as well, but I know there's not going to be back and forth, but so full disclosure, I do sit on the Affordable Housing Committee. We did do our review and approved it, and you'll see that of the housing section. But there's a mention about infill in a lot of the areas, the other areas. I mean, we should be thinking about infill. I mean, every area has some capacity for infill if you think about it creatively. And to only really target certain areas for infill is really missing opportunities to create more housing. And for example, I saw on one of the maps, there's some proposed purchase of land, I think, or making a park on Spear Street, in an area that could be really highly desirable, really opportune for some infill, and maybe wanting to balance something like that with maybe spending that money. I know this is getting in the weeds someplace else, because I think I think we're trying to get, I think part of climate change is to have some, we're trying to get people out of their cars. We want to get people out of their cars. You might want to have some more flexibility to build something near where people live, or have outdoor space near where other people live, so that everybody isn't darting across town to get to these desirable things. That's really my comment about accessibility. And I did see a desire to make the parks more accessible. I'm wondering if there's a way to make that more clear. Are you talking about accessible from a physical standpoint of people with disabilities or other abilities to move their bodies? Or are we talking about economic? Because that would be an important distinction, because because again, we want, people who may have disabilities may not be driving a car anyway. So if we're going to make it fully accessible for their bodies, maybe sort of consider how you would make it more accessible from a economic standpoint. So that's, I think that's my comments for that. I wonder, I also wonder about, I guess this is a question of how you're working with the neighboring towns. And I don't know if, I know he's mentioned it. I don't know if I'm, because from what I hear in
Can you
Heinz,
speak more into the
Yeah.
mic?
oh, sorry, from Heinsberg, I know that there's like a huge traffic problems in Heinsberg, and I'm wondering from a regional sense if we're going to be encouraged to continue to be taking up more housing. And so I'm just asking if that's something that's in discussions or not.
Do you wanna?
Sure. We work very closely with all of our surrounding municipalities on all kinds of issues, because most things that happen in Chittenden County and our surrounding areas are interwoven in some way. I will say that the collaborative and engaged guiding principle is partially targeted, not fully, but partially targeted at that kind of work across municipal lines with the state, with nonprofits, with other partners, with private enterprise, et cetera. So that kind of communication already occurs between sort of the planning people in Heinsberg and the planning people here. But it is one of our guiding principles to continue those relationships and expand on them for exactly the reasons that you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely I hear it over and over in the meetings, concerns about wildlife and concerns about, saving open spaces. But my concern would be as we overlook some of the human needs, that those human needs will get pushed outwards into these outer lying communities, and they'll absorb the population and then just be driving through South Burlington all the time anyway. So it's, and then that will kind of contribute to everybody's kind of quality of life going down. And I do have a sense that we want to, preserve all the beautiful things we have. I mean, obviously, but I just think we need to be giving as much weight to people who need housing and need green space, and not having it so consolidated in one area.
Yeah. Thank you, Nora.
You're welcome.
And, I guess not to have a big discussion, but there is some text in there as well that describes those different colors on the map. I know I kind of didn't get into all the details when we looked at the map, but it does talk about providing open space and park space kind of for all the different locations that people would be living. So it may not completely address, but I just want to make sure, there wasn't an impression that the red was only paved. It would include amenities like you're talking about too. So
Yeah,
but we have the notes and we'll
yeah,
keep
well,
it
when
in
I
mind too.
well, just to respond to that, just real quick.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the one map about a proposed parks, those parks weren't in those areas. One was in the southeast quadrant and one was by Red Rocks. And when I saw something about proposed land acquisition, that was in also the southeast. I think it was on a map in the southeast quadrant. So I just thinking that, expand, that again, that we want to be having an eye towards other spaces rather than continuing to add to that chunk of land.
Just a quick point of clarification there. No map shows specific properties for proposed
Oh, okay.
acquisition for park spaces.
Okay.
It is a goal of the plan to create a parks master plan that would do that. What is on the map generally in green is city owned properties the city already owns or is otherwise regulated.
Okay.
In a general way, there's variation and exceptions, but I just don't want you to go away thinking that if something isn't green, that it cannot be a park, because that's not the case.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks, Nora.
No, thanks.
Okay, who would like to go next? This could be
Does anybody
someone-
want to go next?
No, Mike, do you want to go?
I will volunteer.
Great.
Uh,
And your video is off right now, just so you know. We don't have to see you. We can hear you too. I just
well,
want
I
to let
don't
you know.
want to
what-
deny you the pleasure of seeing me. Okay, so here I am. So I may be back at another one of these meetings, but I wanted to share a couple of thoughts.
Mike, could you state your full name, please?
Michael Simino, live on Iris Lane in South Burlington. I'm currently the chair of the Rec and Park Department, but I'm just speaking as an individual citizen this evening. Is that enough of a description?
Yes, thanks, Mike.
Okay. So want to share an initial thought and then kind of perhaps substantiate it with an example. So the statement in the introduction that reads about every decision that our community is going to be making being seen through this lens of climate change. I don't think that statement's necessary because we've had a disposition in this community for the last several years of seeing through things through that lens anyway. And I fear that having it put in writing in our comprehensive plan would be nothing more than a license for our city council to continue making decisions that, in my mind, just don't seem to add up. And I'll give you the most recent example of that. There were a lot of people who found themselves concerned about whether or not the bike path was going to be paved in Hubbard. And Mike Mittag is sitting here this evening, and Mike and I share quite a bit of history on a number of things, one of them being Hubbard. We both sat on the task force when a plan was initially conceived that was a lot more intensive. Well, intensive meaning that it would have welcomed and invited a lot more people from our community to enjoy the asset, which we spent about $1,600,000 for. But that plan was not, I think Mike supported that plan, actually. I think the task force supported that plan with a unanimous vote. But that plan was never realized. I mean, a few different reasons for that, primarily financial, perhaps. Down the road, we find out that we never did our due diligence, and hey, wouldn't it have made sense to do wetland delineation and all? Come to find out there's more of the property that's wet, can't be used, but still quite a bit left by most measures that could still be enjoyed for what might be termed passive recreation. But a lot of people had to really get their act together in a hurry and push back to our city council, because it was pretty well known that the council was disposed to not allowing for a pedestrian and recreation bike path of 10 feet in width in terms of the asphalt to be paved so that bike riders and pedestrians and others could enjoy going through Hubbard Park. So a lot of people had to kind of gather rather quickly and just say, hey, whoa, wait a second, come on, give us a break here. This is a 10-foot wide strip through a 70-acre park that we paid $1.6 million for. How about letting the bike riders and the pedestrians enjoy that on a year-round basis? So our council, I think, grudgingly decided that they were going to give the community a break and let this path be paved. But, you know, we had to, you know, really lobby hard to get them to pave spaces. Many of them, they didn't want to pave spaces. Why pave spaces? That's just going to encourage more people to use the park. A park that people would want to use, come on. And if you can believe this, don't even allow for a work of art to be put in that park. It might kind of provide a little bit more, I don't know, inspiration, insight, make people pause and think a little bit. Not even a work of art. I will tell you as a citizen that I felt completely being unwelcomed to use Hubbard, that the city council had to grudgingly be persuaded. And this is the kind of action that if this language in the introduction to our comprehensive plan is allowed to remain, that this kind of rationalization could be made for just about any action which might occur in our community where on an isolated basis, we're going to determine, oh, is this good for the environment? And that, well, there's 5 people who are going to make this judgment. Are there metrics? What kind of checklist exists for these judgments to be made? I don't know. But is this good for the environment or not? A park that is supposed to serve our entire community. Now, if you look at the draft plan that has been circulated, there are a bunch of warm and fuzzies throughout this plan about inclusivity, about equity, and, you know, words are one thing and actions are others. You've got about a lot of language in this draft plan that speaks to equity and inclusion. The actions of our city council at that hearing on Hubbard Park did nothing to promote equity and inclusion. The outcome of that meeting basically created Hubbard as a sanctuary for the affluent neighbors who live next door to that park. That decision was really fell short in my mind of what this community should be all about. So that language in the introduction, which would give license to our city council to rationalize those kind of decisions, please remove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Who wants to go next? Anyone else in the room? Anyone else online? We have a few people online who have not spoken yet. There's nobody in the room who's jumping up. I can call on you to make sure.
To do your homework.
I know we might have to go join Mike in his rocking chair. You can turn your video back up. Ross.
That rocking chair, by the
Thank
way, is
you.
on my porch
Your
at
rocking
Star
chair
Farm
looks
Beach.
great.
Have you got a lot of beer hand?
Well, I do. I'm looking at the sun setting over Lake Champlain right now. And that is inspirational. That's on, almost the view that you get from Hubbard when you are standing above the community gardens. Oh, I
Well,
mean, the gardens.
That sounds fantastic. Okay, I'm gonna call on people just to make sure we're done and then we can go. If not, we can go see that good view. Tim Doyle, you have anything for us tonight?
Nope, just happy to listen. Thank you, though.
Very good. Thanks for joining us. How about Janet Bellavance? Anything for us?
I'm just listening as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Loretta Marriott?
Listening, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, how about the unknown caller?
Just listening, thanks.
Okay, anyone else in the room? I think we can all go join Mike seeing the sunset. Wonderful. Okay, this is the earliest I've gotten to adjourn us in a really long time. Okay, do we need to have any more discussion up here about who's covering the listening sessions, or are we?
I guess I would feel more comfortable if I knew who was attending on Thursday and who would be willing to give the presentation on Thursday so that you know that as soon as possible.
You have it available. on
Yep.
your-
It will be exactly the same as Jessica, and I can run it for you if you don't want to advance it yourself, whoever it is. That's totally fine.
There, have it, you can.
Yep, I can press the button.
I'm willing to do the talking.
Okay.
Yeah, and you've seen it twice now, so you're
Yeah.
an expert.
Add my own flavor.
I'm sure you will. I'm
So-
sure it'll be great.
So we'll have Michael give the presentation on Thursday. Duncan is on Saturday. Who is attending on Tuesday,
The first,
August 1st?
I'll be going, but.
Maybe it's Lori.
Sorry,
You want to do it?
Sure.
you win.
Okay.
Do it? No.
I will be,
Well, if you.
I will be
really
there
don't-
on that day.
I'm really worried about it. I'll get Michael.
Okay, if you're really worried, have Michael do it and I'll be. Yes.
Thursday and Tuesday are both noon to 1:30, and Saturday is 10 to 11:30 AM, as I had to clarify with someone.
Okay, well, it's not 10 PM. I'll tell you that. Some of our meetings
Oh, it's not 10 PM?
do that. Okay, anything else
Planning Commission
before we
after
go? Okay, wonderful. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you so much for coming. Hope you can listen into some of the additional sections, and we will be keeping these notes in mind during our deliberations too. Thank you.